Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. We're going to look at a manga and a Western comic. I'm not sure if it's Manga Monday. I'm not sure if it's Western Wednesday. I do it this way because it's fun to do it that way. All right, first let's look at Pokemon Adventures Volume 5, story by Hidenori Kusaka, art by Mato. So overall, Pokemon Adventures, I think, is one of the best all ages manga there is. It has a perfect blend of basically like age appropriate, all ages, childish adventure stories, but then complements that with some really bare knuckle brawling, good versus evil fight scenes. So it's sort of like it's bringing the best of older manga into a G or PG rated adventure series. And it's also doing this really interesting thing with its protagonists where because the focus of the manga is Pokemon and not just any one character, they've actually changed the protagonist, which is a really risky thing to do. And they've made it work by having Yellow's positive qualities contrast with weaknesses that Yellow needs to overcome. So Yellow is very nice, kind of happy-go-lucky, loves all the Pokemons and doesn't want any of them to get hurt, but the overall theme or problem is that because Yellow is so sympathetic to Pokemon, he kind of needs to man up a little bit. He's got to get past the soy boy inside him so that he can actually defeat and overcome evil, even if that means hurting his enemies, Pokemon. So it's a tough character arc for him. So first off, I just want to call attention to the fact that Blue, the rival from the first Pokemon game, who everybody called like Butthead or whatever, is so badass. He's basically like a Piccolo character, even down to having like the epic flowing cape and shoulder armor. And what's really neat about this volume is Blue philosophically and kind of in his attitude is a contrast to Red. Red is hot-headed and a chipper, young manly fighter, and Blue is a much more calm and collected, serious type. And he's really learned the best of his rival's qualities. So Red was a bit more intuitive, a little bit more inventive. Blue was a bit more prepared and logical. Blue's learned to add a little bit of spontaneity and kind of like on-the-fly inventiveness to his fighting style. And Yellow, unfortunately, is very naive about how Pokemon work. Like, Yellow loves Pokemon and he takes care of his Pokemon like they're his friends, but he doesn't really have much scientific knowledge of how they work. So he doesn't even know how evolution works. And he'll pick Pokemon not based on whether they're powerhouses. He'll pick Pokemon based on whether they actually really like him back. I marked this because this is kind of neat. What do you call it? Pantomime, no dialogue, comedy acting with the Pokemon, which is something that would come up a lot in the TV series. So it was just sort of nice to see that, they have these little animal characters that can't talk. But in comics, where in any visual medium, you have a lot of opportunities to have a silent character, show a lot of personality and maybe work in a way that it, like pantomime comedy doesn't work as well if you just describe it in a novel. So if you have a visual medium like comics or TV, you have a little bit more opportunity for that kind of storytelling. Skipping forward, this is a nice example of how good the writer is at making sure that little themes carry throughout the story. So Blaine is a redeemed villain, used to work for Team Rocket, felt guilty about what he was doing, joined the light side, and Team Rocket invented this insulation suit to protect their minions from electric attacks. And we see Red was smart, realized that would be useful, and took some of it to make a glove so that he could sort of use Pikachu's Pokeball without worrying about getting electrocuted. But now this is coming back to bite them in the rear end because now the bad guys are starting to use that technology. So it's just a nice little detail like that. Like if someone invents something in the story, that means that the knowledge of how to invent like protection from electric attacks exists. So they make sure to keep using that. It gives it a nice feel of continuity. There's some interesting stuff like inventive use of Pokemon. So like Porygon's like a digital Pokemon in the game. And they kind of have the bright idea that means that Porygon can travel from Pokedex to Pokedex to set up these great attacks. Like that's a great idea. I feel like Pokemon recycled that idea a few generations later. Like they had a Pokédex Pokemon. There's just lots of great ideas with Pokemon that don't necessarily have anything to do with the games. They're just looking at the Pokemon thinking, what kind of cool powers could they have? And then bringing that into the story in a very creative way. Did I lose my bookmark? No. Okay. I marked this because, again, a departure from the game is that the Elite Four are a more serious threat in the manga than they are in the game. In the game, you beat the Elite Four, then you go fight Blue. In this, it's kind of like they're above all that. They don't really care about the Pokemon Championship or the Pokemon League. They're basically terrorists who think that human beings are a threat to Pokemon, so they want to wipe out all human life except for like a select few who are master trainers. So again, this is something Nintendo would recycle later. They'd eventually have the idea of like, oh, we should have like a Pokemon team that are like Pokemon rights activists and they're terrorists, right? That's such a great, simple idea. It's really interesting to see that in the manga format, they capitalized on a lot of these great ideas that would get reused later. Like, it's such a good idea. Of course, you've got to use that. Do I care that it matches up with the game? Who cares? It's working great for this story. And another example, like in the game, you catch Mewtwo. In this, they have the bright idea to give Mewtwo to Blaine, which adds something to his character. Now he's not just a gym leader; he's the master of Mewtwo, which is like a big deal. And he kind of has a emotional connection to Mewtwo because he was one of the evil scientists who helped create Mewtwo and was actually injured as a result of that, hence his arm. So it's sort of like now that he's redeemed, he has this deeper connection with Mewtwo where he kind of sees like he has a responsibility to care for Mewtwo. And it makes sense to have like an older, mature character work with something like that. Like if you gave Mewtwo to like a little doofy kid, like would they be able to handle it? Would they be able to like train something that was literally smarter than them? So it's just great. They do really creative stuff with the characters to give them their own feel in the manga universe. So fantastic. The orange color, by the way, I didn't know this. They have lots of little interesting factoids. It was a celebration of the 3rd anniversary of Pokemon, and Nintendo released these orange Game Boys as a like commemorative celebration of the birthday. So they matched up the manga to fit with that. Just a neat little factoid. Superman, The Final Fate, number 14, written by Brian Michael Bendis. I only have this because it was packed in a Walmart comic, and they didn't put this one on the front, because if I saw Bendis, I'd say, oh no, I don't want a Bendis comic. So good job, DC. You got me to buy a comic I otherwise wouldn't have bought. But it wasn't horrible. It just wasn't everything I'd want out of a Superman comic. So the meme of Brian Michael Bendis is that he loves speech bubbles, and he'll put dozens and dozens of speech bubbles in a panel. He'll cover up great art with all of his speech bubbles. Sometimes it's really obnoxious and it's meme worthy. This wasn't that bad. I feel like Brian Michael Bendis kind of tried to tone it down a little bit. So there's still, a good chunk of speech bubbles, but he's not filling the whole page with gobs and gobs and gobs of them. And I really like the art team on this. Ivan Reis for the pencils, Joe Prado, and Auclair Albert for the inks. There's this whole arc. I really like the Snickers ads, by the way, but there's this whole arc that there's this guy who is basically responsible for blowing up Krypton. It wasn't an accident. And then there's kind of like this neat thing where General Zod was working for him, but once General Zod finds out he's responsible for destroying Krypton, Zod turns on him because Zod's a bad guy, but he's still Kryptonian. He loves his people and he loves his planet. It was just kind of like, after that was kind of like a straightforward, like, punching the bad guy in space, watch out for the radiation, Superman, because I guess it's super radiation or Kryptonian radiation that'll kill even you. And it just kind of like cuts off when the Thungarians show up, and Thanagarians, the Hawkmen planet people. I guess this is after Jonathan Kent got aged up to a teenager, which ticked off some fans of the Adventures of the Super Sons. But okay, so here's the annoying part. The annoying part is Bendis basically says, okay, this is going to be the formation of the UN in space. Because if there's one thing we know about the real world UN, it's that everyone loves it. All of the people in the UN are just great, wonderful people, like Rapistania, like the wonderful people of Rapistania. Oh, there's absolutely no problems whatsoever with the UN. So, of course, if you made the UN in space, it'd be even better than the regular UN, right? Because now it's the UN in space. So, the reason this is kind of annoying to me is that the real-life UN is kind of annoying. I kind of hate in a sci-fi series where they say, oh, we have so much war in the galaxy. If only we had a place where everyone could get together and talk about their problems, then we would have world peace or galactic peace. Like, it sort of instantly will take you out of the story, because if you know, like, human history, you basically know it's not going to work. Human nature doesn't change. That being said, a lot of old-timey Golden Age Superman comics would have this kind of a positive thing. Like, what if there was a utopia in the future? What if there was a great futuristic city where man lives as one with robots, right? So it's sort of like Brian Michael Bendis is writing something which fits with the tone of Superman, like the Legion of Superheroes. That's kind of like a positive, optimistic vision of the future, where in the 31st century, there will be all these great superheroes. The future will be super duper wonderful, and we'll have flying cars, and everything will be great. I just feel like Bendis ought to... One of the things I hate about modern comics is sometimes they're so cynical that they don't have any of like this magical idea of the future. But I feel like if you just sort of have like a magic utopia where everything is good and we're all going to have world peace, you're missing the point of optimism, or kind of like having a healthy vision of the future. Like, you got to strike a balance. So like the balance I would try to strike is say maybe they make some progress on defeating evil and stopping wars across the galaxy. But that doesn't necessarily mean that having a space UN isn't going to magically fix all of these problems forever. I don't know. I'm not quite sure where the balance would be. It's just, even though I'm kind of forgiving of old-timey comic books like Superman having, sort of sweet or idealistic ideas in the book, the idea of a space UN is so hard to accept if you know anything about history that it kind of took me right out of the story. And then they all say, oh, sorry, no offense, Superman, but you're not the great person in the future. Your son is considered the great superhero in the future, and we're going to take him out of his own time and bring him into the future? Okay. It's not as bad as some Brian Michael Bendis stuff I've seen. There's some good ideas, like what if there was a secret conspiracy behind the destruction of Krypton? I just can't accept something that has that idealistic a view of human nature. There's always going to be evil. It's just like Mum-Ra. As long as evil exists, Mum-Ra lives. That's such a great idea. That's something that should permeate even an idealistic or optimistic view of the future. Is there always has to be evil to be conquered. You never fully eradicate evil. All right, that's it. Pokemon Adventures, I'd highly recommend that. This is going to get donated. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Catch you later.